This build is a war crime. You've probably already seen it all over YouTube, and today I'm finally covering it. This is hands down the most broken build and character in the game. I'm not going to deep dive into how to break a billion damage or anything because honestly that just doesn't matter to me. With a few minutes of effort and barely any Lumina investment, I was already hitting 9-digit damage numbers, which is more than enough to kill every enemy in the game several times over. I really don't recommend this build unless you're an achievement hunter or just looking to relax and breeze through the game. I will be making more fun Maelle builds in the future, including a full team build this weekend, so if you want something more interesting, then I hope you come back for that. However, if you do decide to run this one, I suggest keeping her out of your starting 3. That way, if they go down, you can bring her in as a failsafe and just win. Essentially as a way to lower the difficulty mid-fight. This might be the most broken build I've ever covered on the channel. If you don't want to witness a complete slaughter, then avert your eyes now. The build is designed to function as a solo build, which is where I think she really shines. That said, with a few Pictos swaps, it works just as well in a team. I'll be going over her stance swapping mechanic, the best early skills and rotations, and what exactly makes this build so absurd. Let's start with her stance mechanic. It's probably the simplest one in the game outside of Verso. She has 3 stances: offensive, defensive, and virtuous. Offensive increases her damage but makes her take more damage in return. Defensive makes her tankier and generate more AP. And virtuous? Virtuous just gives her a massive damage boost, with absolutely no downside. Each ability Maelle has coincides with a stance type, both for additional effects, and each one also transitions you to a new stance. The one caveat of virtuous is that it's harder to enter. But that right there is what makes her so busted early on. If you manage to grab the Metalum weapon early, which we will go over later, then honestly, virtuous is the only stance you'll ever need. Technically, the design of Maelle encourages alternating between stances each turn for maximum effect. But in practice, this is unfortunately sort of a design failure. Virtuous is so strong and it's so easy to stay in that you have absolutely no reason to switch to another stance. Maelle hits the ground sprinting. She can hard carry you through acts 1 through 3 easily, though I personally still think Lune is the best DPS in act 2. The first ability we want is Flurret Fury. It's my favorite early pick before she ascends into godhood in act 3. The catch is that it's very dependent on being in virtuous stance, which is only possible in this build if you have Metalum. If you don't have it from the arena, I recommend skipping this skill until you get last chance, since getting into virtuous without it or Metalum is very painful. Next is breaking rules. This gives you 2 great tools. It can break shields in niche fights, and more importantly, it gives you an extra turn if enemies are defenseless. Which, needless to say, early game, before cheater, an extra turn is pretty busted. To set that up, you want Fencer's Flurry. It applies defenseless to all enemies, does decent AoE damage, and synergizes perfectly with breaking rules. This combo is one reason I prefer going down the right side skill tree over the fire one. Fire might have better single target damage and synergy with Metalum, but it lacks the powerful tools of AoE and extra turns. Then there's Mezzo Forte. This keeps you in virtuous longer and gives you the precious AP you're starving for early. When paired with Flurret Fury, you can loop these abilities for devastating effect. I often went Flurret, Mezzo, Flurret, and just deleted 2 enemies. It's a little risky since it takes a few turns and leaves you open to rebuttal, but if you're playing solo, that's something you'll just have to get used to anyway. Next is Last Chance. This is your entry into the God tier combo zone. With the right Pictos, specifically in Media Res and Solidifying, you'll be able to play low health super offensively without just dying instantly. If you missed Metalum, Last Chance finally makes that irrelevant. You'll be entering virtuous stance either way now, and Metalum no longer matters as much. Finally, there's Payback. If you're running solo like I intended, this solves some of your AP issues. Enemies will be targeting you, and if you're parrying, this ability becomes pretty cheap. It also hits hard and helps with break, but it won't stay in the kit long term. Your early rotation entirely depends on whether you have Metalum. If you do, it's pretty simple. Spam Flurret Fury, use Mezzo Forte to maintain Virtuous, and fill in with the other tools as needed. If you don't have Meddlem, use Fencer's Flurry and Breaking Rules together for AoE and bonus turns. Additionally, it's not a bad idea to consider going into the flame damage side of the tree, if you don't have Meddlem. But by the end of the build, it will be the same either way. Once you get Last Chance, you can finally open with that to enable Floret Fury even without Meddlem. Once you hit Act 3, you can retire Floret Fury and Payback, and welcome your new overlords, Stendhal and Phantom Strike. If you haven't seen Stendhal in action yet, then prepare yourself. This is the skill that elevates her from strong to a celestial being descended from the heavens to smite down all the non-believers. It's so broken it pretty much feels completely bugged. The damage multiplier scaling on this skill is just nonsense. It will be one of the 3 buttons you press in Act 3 and it trivializes the entire game. So then why bother with Phantom Strike? Well, Stendhal is single target. While most endgame bosses are solo, there are still some AoE heavy encounters. Phantom Strike doesn't match Stendhal's power, but it's more than enough and loads you up on Radiant Charge for her Gradient Gamage attack, which also happens to be busted. Once you've got the Cheater Picto, every fight goes the same way. Open with Last Chance to pop all of your crazy Pictos, giving her an absurd damage boost. Use Stendhal for single targets, and then use Phantom Strike for groups. That's it. You'll be pressing Last Chance 45% of the time, Stendhal 45% of the time, and Phantom Strike maybe 10% of the time. That's all it takes to delete the entire game. I'll show you what it does to the final boss at the end of the video, so fair warning, if you haven't met him yet or are okay with being spoiled. He's extremely difficult when actually fought with a fair build, and this build makes him look like a complete joke. As mentioned many times in this video, your weapon of choice is Meddlem, early, late, and always. It's easy to get and does the one thing we care about, get you into Virtuous Stance. You get it from beating the Gestural Village Arena by using Maelle, who is a fencer, so let's be honest, she's probably just the best character for it anyway. But if you missed it, then Stalem and Brularum are solid alternatives. Just note that their scaling is different, so adjust your attributes accordingly. Stalem wants defense and luck, Meddlem wants defense and agility. So now let's get into those attributes. Start with defense. It's great for solo survivability and weapon scaling. Then go agility to outspeed enemies and take full advantage of your weapon. Finally, stack might to crank your already insane damage even higher. I'll put the ideal Pictos on screen now, and they're also listed in the leveling guide linked below. The ones I'm using are for solo play, but you can easily swap in SOS Pictos for a full team comp. The crazy thing is you only really need about 200 Lumina to one-shot everything. There's really no need to push beyond that unless you want to see some out-of-this-world numbers. The Pictos on screen now are enough to delete the game 2 times over. However, there are some more damage things you can add to make this build even more crazy. As mentioned in the video, this build is made for solo, but there's one trick worth mentioning. Send in an auto-death companion loaded with death buff and debuff Pictos. They'll buff Maelle and soften enemies, while still giving Maelle the benefits of being solo. It's completely optional, but it pushes this build from an 11 out of 10 to a 12 out of 10. If you've ever wanted to stop playing the game and just win, then this is it. Maelle turns every boss into a joke and every encounter into a formality. Whether you're pushing for speed, need a farming build, or just want to watch the numbers fly, this is the build that does that. As a reminder, spoilers ahead on the last secret boss and what this build does to them. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Not giving up. Okay. Last chance. Not looking good.